Cycling for me has never been about the bikes. They've only ever been the prerequisite tool. I do not see just a bike race, I see riders on heroic journeys and warriors doing battle. At one point, cycling was the most popular sport in Europe because newspapers told magnificent tales about epic races and crafted the great champions into legends. But with the advent of television, cycling lost some of its mystique, and that golden age of journalism and narration has perished. So now let us try to return some romance to the beautiful sport. Let us praise and give glory to phenomenal performances to be remembered for decades to come. Let us dwell on the moments that inspire and move us. Let us chronicle the rise and fall of heroes. Let us chart these life-changing journeys, these cycling odysseys. All right, welcome back to another episode of Cycling Odysseys. I'm your host, Patrick Satino. Today, we are recapping the Women's Worlds. It was much different than the World Cup race, as I'll get into here. Anyways, no point to really spoil anything too much more, so let's jump in and I can say some stuff afterwards. "2022 Women's Cyclocross Worlds. Even goats and cannibals need to stay hydrated." The lights flashed green and the Women's Elite World Championships were off. Into the first turn, with the whole shot, it was no surprise to see a Dutch woman dressed in orange. But it was a surprise to see the Dutch woman be Celine del Carmen Alvarado, who had only recently been showing signs of renewed hope in a select few races since New Year's Day. Trailing behind Alvarado were the two heavyweights. The pre-race favorites all hoped would contest an epic duel. The title-defending Lucinda Brand and Marianne Vos the GOAT. The Fayetteville course was running significantly different than the World Cup race in October, but the layout of the course was very much the same or identical. So, after the first turn, there were some archetypical cyclocross twists and turns. On the last 180 of this set of turns before the course headed into the woods, Alvarado on the front took the typical wide circling line around the switchbacking fence. Alvarado's back wheel clashed with Marianne Vos's and caused her to lose control of the bike. Almost any other rider would have gone down after such a collision, but somehow Marianne Vos managed to keep it upright while sitting on the top tube, tripoding around the turn and without even needing to dismount. And Marianne Vos, eternal champion that she is, went right on with racing unfazed, moving instantly up the crowded field from 10th to about 5th. Ahead, Lucinda Brand had probably sensed or seen Vos's almost spill from the corner of her eye. She moved into the front position for the lumpy wooded section and led down the long, steep, sweeping, and plunging descent. And following her like a shadow was Celine del Carmen Alvarado. Marianne Vos took the plunge in about 5th place. They zigged and zagged, swooshed and zoomed down at ferocious speeds to finally reach the bottom as the course turned upwards to climb the same altitude they had just descended. Lucinda Brand led up the climb with Celine del Carmen Alvarado following exactly behind, and Marianne Vos was measuredly catching up while all the other competitors were being distanced away. They emerged over the top of the steep hill on the main hilltop grounds where most of the spectators gathered as the course weaved through every which way. But whereas this Ozarkan hillside of Arkansas in October resembled a fair green corner on the edge of the Midwest or South, today in January, the grounds looked more akin to dry, arid, windswept lands in Texas or even further west. There was no green to be found anywhere. The trees appeared dead naked gray trunks. Any hint of grass, with a slick muddy section down the middle, was non-existent. The ground looked like Wild West cowboy dirt. On some of the turns, riders' back wheels drifted up skids of cloudy dust. Such conditions with fair 45 or 50 degree weather did diminish the epic spectacle a remote viewer craves. But the trade-off was supremely fast racing. Any technical mistakes or mechanicals would certainly be costly. So it was, with all this in mind, that Lucinda Brand led Alvarado and Marianne Vos clear of the field along the one technical ridge of the course. through the twists and turns of the hilltop plain, back into the short wooded section, and into the massive epic staircase that towered intimidatingly over the hilltop plain. The 3 Dutch riders in orange plunged down, past the pits for the second time of the lap, swung into the final banked twists and turns that allowed for ramped up speeds as the leaders dropped down into the finishing straight. All of this, Lucinda Brand led as if she were a locomotive engine at the front of a 3-car train. Alvarado and Marianne Vos behind both refused to come through. Perhaps they were on their limit, following Brand's barnstorming pace. Perhaps it was strategy to do no work at all, for it was Lucinda Brand's job to drop them both. Well, it seems one rider was employing one of those perhapses against Brand, and the other was employing the other. Yes, over the course of the second lap, Lucinda Brand increased the pace and produced an even faster lap. Alvarado sat in as best she could, holding Lucinda Brand's wheel for dear life with all her might. But after the largest hill on course, she was starting to waver. Brand was prying open a gap inch by inch, but with the high speeds, Alvarado was still within a few seconds going into the stairs, and Marianne Vos, despite the wide course, did not yet have a good opportunity to pass. Lucinda Brand in front flew up the stairs in hopes to find a solo gap, but as Alvarado had not the stamina and strength to follow up the long and wide 40-step staircase, around her came the Cannibal, Marianne Vos, on the prowl and in control. As Lucinda Brand remounted for the plunge, Vos was back in her wheel. Brand kept driving the relentless pace of the second lap, and she cracked open her lead on Alvarado. But Marianne Vos went along for the ride. An unexpectedly heroic ride was produced by the Italian in Azzurra Blue, Silvia Persecco, who was the only rider within a stone's throw of the 3 in Dutch Orange. Celine Del Carmen Alvarado had done what she needed to do in the dark horse role, but she was outclassed by the 2 greatest guns of the season on their way to an epic duel that was expected and hoped for by all. Alvarado would battle with Persecco for the rest of the race for the last podium position, but they come into this tale no longer. For yes, indeed, the begged-for duel was beginning and drew away all the attention, despite the great battle for third. As said, Lucinda Brand came across the second lap faster than she did the first, which was quite a statement, seeing as the first lap usually has average amplifying advantage of a speedy start. But Lucinda Brand needed to try this, for in a sprint between her and her biggest competitor, Marianne Vos, who was still sitting in her wheel, Lucinda Brand was sure to lose. Already this season, she had lost multiple races in such a fashion. Marianne Vos knew this better than anyone, and she was confident in her chances in sprint this day as well. Additionally, with the course running so fast, it was overtly advantageous to nestle in behind someone for the draft. Based on the time of the first 2 laps completed, the organizers determined the race would be 7 laps. So, Lucinda Brand now had 5 laps left to figure out how to shake Marianne Vos the Cannibal, Marianne Vos the greatest of all time. Lucinda Brand spent the entire third lap leading and attempting to shake off Marianne Vos, who was gorilla glued to her wheel, but it was not working, despite the fact that their lead was ballooning to all the other riders behind. So, coming into the finishing straight of the third lap, Lucinda Brand was visibly frustrated and gestured to Marianne Vos to come through and do a turn at least to make the race somewhat even. But Marianne Vos was taking a drink from her water bottle. Right, I know, it was an extremely strange sight to see the GOAT of women's cycling and cyclocross sneaking swigs of water in a cross for a number of reasons. First, there is a traditional bottle taboo in cyclocross, even in the hottest of September conditions. The race is only 50 minutes. Theoretically, a rider should be able to properly hydrate for the effort. Perhaps a rider can get a pass on the steamiest, humid days of the September World Cups, but this was the World Championships in January. What the hell was the GOAT doing racing with a water bottle? Additionally, a bottle in a cage, as opposed to the non-dominant backside pocket, could hinder the rider's mobility to shoulder the bike. And lastly, on an undulating and twisting cyclocross course, where exactly is a rider supposed to be able to take a drink? But therein lied the answer. Perhaps the 19-year professional really did need the hydration on this sunny and balmy January day. But more likely, what Marianne Vos was doing was a ploy of cutthroat cannibal cruelty. The only flat straight stretch of course to steal a swig of water was on the finishing straight. Vos was simply using the hydrating trick as an excuse not to come through. Vos truly had no plans of doing any work, only attacking if Braun made a mistake or looked vulnerable, or if it came down to a sprint, she fancied her chances anyways. This bottle tactic, along with the 4th grade drama club pain faces Vos made past the pits each lap where Braun's team managers could see her, were probably overkill. But such meticulous preparations of over-the-top bluffs are surely part of what make Marianne Vos the GOAT. So, Lucinda Brand still led for most of the 4th lap, but her pace slowed significantly. Brand knew she was just wasting energy. She knew she could not relentlessly wear down Vos like the sands of time. As the two dueling combatants passed the pit towards the end of the lap to take a 180 turn, Braun took a slow and sweeping outside line, and Marianne Vos the Cannibal finally came to the front. But Vos on the front still did not much help Lucinda Brand, who was proving to be trapped in between a rock and a hard place. Either Vos simply set an easy toying tempo that kept most of her powder dry, or she threw in uneven and sporadic attacks and accelerations. Brand could cover these attacks, but she did not much like them. For by way of comparison, Lucinda Brand is a steady diesel engine preferring to churn one high but constant gear, whereas Marianne Vos was acting like a Formula One race car, accelerating and decelerating on a dime and flooring it out of the corners and uphill at will. Marianne Vos led the entire 5th lap in this fashion, and at the end of it, on the final straightaway, she slowed down to take a long drink from her water bottle, and Lucinda Brand came back onto the front for the penultimate lap. The race entered the endgame with 2 laps to go, and Lucinda Brand daringly sent it on the descent, hoping to find a gap by taking risks that Marianne Vos would cautiously forego. But Marianne Vos, the GOAT, was able to follow, and they came to the bottom of the long, grueling hill together. Marianne Vos had followed Lucinda Brand's every move all race, with the air of one who is riding with diamonds in their legs. So, finally, on this most formidable climb of the race, Marianne Vos dropped the hammer as if she were Charles Martel or Judas Maccabeus. On the steepest pitch, she had separation. But Lucinda Brand, the defending champion, heroically scrambled and smashed the pedals to close it before the two crested the climb. Lucinda Brand knew if she gave Vos an inch, it was over. But as she caught Vos, Vos sat up and pedaled easy. Brand refused to come through, and so Marianne Vos quickly attacked again, instantly accelerating up to the F1 speeds of which she is capable. With that scorching attack zigzagging across and around the race grounds, Marianne Vos finally had Lucinda Brand on the ropes as they reached the long staircase. Vos, the Cannibal, did not let up at all up those stairs, but Lucinda Brand behind clocked the fastest stairs interval of her life to catch and latch back on. Both plunged down together, but instead of trying to continue snapping the elastic, Marianne Vos sat up and refused to ride altogether. This allowed Brand to somewhat get her breath back, but she also had to come to the front to pace. On the straightaway, as they heard the bell, Marianne Vos was still drinking from her bottle and surely was not able to do a turn of pace. Was she drinking or milking this hydration ruse? The pair zigged and zagged through the early turns. Brand picked up the pace for the lumpy first bit of the wooded section, and on that descent, Brand again took some risks in hopes to go clear solo, but to no avail. They got to the bottom of the massive climb again, and again Vos tried to rocket launch it. But this time, Brand was fully ready for it and ready to respond immediately, no matter the energy cost. Brand was back on Vos's wheel before even halfway up the climb. And, very unorthodoxly, the Cannibal, Marianne Vos, instinctively slowed all momentum, even on the steepest pitch of the climb. Brand then counterattacked, and Marianne Vos had to scramble to catch back on, but was able to follow. At this point, all of Lucinda Brand's alarm bells had to be ringing. This was going to come down to a sprint. Vos and Brand jockeyed for position for the next turns and straights of the course into the staircase. This time, both took it at a more reasonable pace, both probably already anticipating the sprint. They came past the pit together and swung the 180, where Brand hoped to get Vos to come to the front so that Marianne Vos, the superior sprinter, could at least lead out the sprint from the front. But Vos wasn't biting. Around the 180, Lucinda Brand came to basically a track stand, but still Marianne Vos refused to come through. And so Lucinda Brand had to continue on the front or lose all momentum or even completely stop. They took the final twists and turns, and Brand ratcheted up the pace. For that, at least, would make for a long-range and gradual sprint. Both bowled around the final turn like a bobsled, and Lucinda Brand dug in and went for it in the sprint. But Marianne Vos, the eternal GOAT, came out of her slipstream in a round to sit up and celebrate across the line, to take who knows what triple-digit win of her career. With this 8th cyclocross world title, Marianne Vos, the Cannibal and GOAT, joins the elitist company of gaps between historic wins. The reliably excellent trivia question and most impressive gap in cycling history is, of course, the famous and record 10-year gap between Gino Bartoli's 1938 and 1948 Tour de France victories. The gap was obviously created by the Second World War that robbed Gino Bartoli of his prime cycling years and aged him up significantly before his time due to stressful unseen deeds of valor. The 1948 victory was a complete surprise and one of the greatest comebacks in sports history. No gap between cycling victories has ever held a candle to this accomplishment. That is, until this day. Marianne Vos, the GOAT, has won her 8th cyclocross world title 16 years after her first and a full 8 years since her 7th. Finally, there is indeed a record to rival Bartoli's record gap, and I am truly at a loss to argue which is the more impressive feat. But be that as it may, let us return to the events on the ground. Marianne Vos continues to defy Father Time's schedules. She continues on, as if it really were just yesterday. Who knows how long she will be around, but to see performances such as these must be cherished. Who knows how many races are left for this cannibal to devour? Who knows how many full gallons of water are left for this goat to drink? All right, excellent race. Very good, very good. I'm tired from writing this, but yeah, it was pretty awesome. History made. Champion of champions, the Cannibal, the GOAT. That really is quite the gap too. That goes up there with the Bartoli gap, and Bartoli's my all-time favorite guy, FYI. So it's cool to see somebody actually in contention with that. Anyways, this one was kind of long, so yeah, I'm actually just gonna keep it short tonight. So thanks for listening, everybody. Viva Ciclismo.